and a very warm good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Conclave on Transformative Education for the Next Generation of Shared Civilization. This is me, Asma Bidari from National Training and Research Academy, and I'm honored to be your MC for today's event. I would like to welcome you all to this conclave themed Transformative Education for Next Generation of Shared Civilization. This conclave is supported by King's College, Kathmandu, Nepal. As we gather here, we are united by a common goal: to explore and promote holistic education that empower our youth, especially girls, to thrive in an increasingly interconnected world. Education is not just a privilege, it is a fundamental human right and a powerful catalyst for social and economic development. Today's conclave will focus on various aspects of holistic education, personality development, and the importance of nurturing future global citizens. We are privileged to have distinguished speakers and panelists who will share their insights and experience throughout this event. Together, we can discuss strategies to foster inclusive learning environments and strengthen education ties between India and Nepal. Before we dive into our program, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our co-chair for this conclave, Ms. Praveena Dahal from Nepal and Ms. Navita Srikant from India. Their dedication and leadership have been instrumental in bringing this event to life. Please join me in giving them a warm round of applause. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Neeti Bhalla Saini, Principal of Mayo College Girls' School. Mr. Medin Lamichhane, Principal of Yulin School, and Mr. Narottam Aryal, Executive Director of King's College, Kathmandu, Nepal. Today, as we come together for the conclave on transformative education, it is a meaningful coincidence that our event is being held on the day of Saraswati Puja, which is a festival dedicated to Goddess of knowledge, wisdom, and learning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to request our distinguished guest, Mrs. Neeti Bhalla Saini, to please come forward for the panas lighting ceremony and light up the panas. I'd also like to request our co-chairs to join us. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me invite on stage Ms. Praveena Dahal, Executive Director of National Training and Research Academy, for her welcome remarks. Ms. Dahal is specialized in Human Resource Management from Kathmandu University School of Management. With a career spanning organizations such as UNICEF and Keynote, she has consistently demonstrated exceptional expertise in human resource management. Her focus on organizing impactful training and skills and fostering professional growth. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Dahal, co-chair of this event, for her remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of National Tara, it's my absolute pleasure to extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to each one of you. On auspicious occasion of Saraswati Puja, we are gathered here with a shared purpose to embrace transformative education for next generation of a shared civilization, where learning goes beyond the textbooks and becomes a force of unity, growth, and positive change. In today's interconnected world, education must cultivate a sense of shared humanity, teaching students to collaborate beyond boundaries and respect diversity. Transformative education is more than academics. It is nurturing thinkers, leaders, and compassionate change makers who build a civilization rooted in understanding, trust, and shared process. On a personal note, I stand before you today not just as a speaker, but also as a mother. I deeply understand the emotions that come with sending our kids away from home in pursuits of excellence. My own kids in Mayo Boys and Mayo Girls, and for me, these institutes have truly become home away from home. Navita and I have a wonderful friendship. We share a deep connection based on shared values and culture. Our friendship grew into a trusted bond as she is a local guardian for my children. Our discussion have constantly revolved around the aspirations that education in Nepal has to be the best. The concern about children's migration for better education opportunities underscores the need for transformative solutions within Nepal's own system. Now, with the platform for discussion, we today have an opportunity to bring together like-minded individuals and experts to explore meaningful strategies for the best in Nepalese education system. This platform can serve as a space to analyze current challenges, purpose reforms, and implement initiatives that will evaluate the quality of education in Nepal, ensuring that every children receive a world-class education. As we embark on this journey together, let us embrace an education that not only informs mind, but also inspires our heart. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to invite Ms. Navita Srikant to the stage for her welcome remarks. Ms. Srikant is a highly regarded international development expert with over 27 years of experience advising government and Fortune 500 companies on financial management, governance, and economic crime. She has made significant contribution as the World Bank's first global lead of Forensic Service Unit. Additionally, Ms. Srikant has actively engaged with civil society to strengthen culture and educational exchanges between India and Nepal. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Navita Srikant, co-chair of this event, to the stage for her remarks.
Good afternoon. Let me first begin with a small chant prayer. Ya Devi Sarvbhuteshu, Vidya Samprint Sansita, Namastasya, Namastasya, Namo Namah. So on this auspicious occasion, I heartily welcome all of you. And let's leave, when we leave from here, with some form of commitment that be it from the education institutions that we have the leaders here, both from India and Nepal, and we have parents here, and we have eminent leaders from the society, from different institutions, that let's reflect back as a community, what change will we make in our individual capacity or through the institutions for safeguarding the future of youth. So that is a commitment I want to leave on table. And before I jump into talk about briefly what we are doing today, we're all talking about demographic dividend of Indian subcontinent. We take pride when we talk about demographic dividend. But is that dividend going to stay in this country, or is that dividend going to serve the purposes of other countries? Have we asked ourselves this question? When I see the numbers of migration that's happening both in Nepal, the numbers are really scary, but it's happening in India as well. And Principal Ma'am can talk about it. But these are the concerns in the region, that why we see such amount of migration, why youth is going, they're not pursuing higher studies or masters, but really at an undergrad level. At high school level, have we gone so wrong? So this is a question that I want to table. The other question which comes to my mind, we are all talking about, we are into fourth industrial revolution, which means the technological advancements. Are our institution is at country level? Is Nepal ready? Is Nepal offering such kind of facilities to the youth to not just be in the lower rank of the value chain in the fourth IR, but be in the leaders? One of the areas I've been reading about, that we are looking at developing Nepal as a hub of, export of IT services. But how many institutions are there? In India, the good part was that NITs started long back. But one of the areas which troubled me, I asked myself, that it was back in 2022. This is when India and Nepal signed up the agreement for IIT Madras collaboration here. Has IIT Madras arrived here? And if not, then have we asked our questions, where are we lacking? So we need to create that infrastructure for our youth to actually be able to participate in those the new and emerging technologies we talk about. How many AI robotics labs that we see here? So this is something I again want to leave, because we have a lot of business leaders here, that if we want those commitments or we are talking of those hi-fi numbers, which are not just political statements, they need to be converted back. Last, what have we witnessed recently in the world? Lots of conflicts, lots of wars. Do we really want our children to get out there? And the beauty of both India and Nepal, and I take immense pride when I say that it is our culture which makes us the most peace-loving nations. India and Nepal, we take the pride of actually being the significant contributors to UN peacekeeping, which means it is in our genetics. But why is it difficult for us to actually bring it back to the education institutions that our young children are not talking about community issues? You know, there is no Nepal and India when we talk about, or Indian subcontinent. We are talking about shared water. We are talking about shared climate change and shared climate issues, which are as a threat right glaring in our faces. So have we developed, how are we developing our children as global leader from the Indian subcontinent, that when they are tabling these issues at the level of multilaterals, at the UN, at the World Bank, or wherever the policy making happens, that we speak for the region, not through the borders or for each country. So this is something I would also want to encourage. And lastly, I want to leave here, and let me tell you just 1 second, that what drove me to this event today, or where the idea was born. About 2 years back, I was talking to a young Nepali boy, about a 16-year-old boy. And I just curious, we were discussing different disciplines, and they were keen to know about mine. So I asked this young boy, I said, what do you want to do when you grow up? So I was expecting an answer that the child would, or the young boy would say, discipline, it could be business, entrepreneur, or a technology, robotics, any area of discipline. The child replied, and I still get goosebumps when I remember that reply. Oh, ma'am, I am going to join an NGO. I'll work there for 1.5 years or 2. I'll get an international certificate. And then I will immediately, it'll be very easy with that certificate for me to get out of the country, and then I'll see what I need to do. Have we missed out on what education is supposed to deliver? Have we converted him, a young boy, into an adult? That he had no clarity of the disciplines. He had no vision of the discipline. Be the discipline leader or a professional leader or a technical leader, he already had a shortcut path to get out of the country. And this is where, for me, I thought this conversation is extremely necessary, that we come back together in this room. And that's where the seeds were sown. So I'm glad to see Manisha ji has joined. I heartily welcome her. And she is more than just a dear friend. For me, she symbolizes, and when she speaks of both India and Nepal, you'll do the introductions, but let me still. When we talk, because she started in India, and whenever we have conversations, we don't talk of India and Nepal individually, separately. It's natural that our shared culture, shared people, our shared challenges, we could relate with each other and talk about societies as open border societies, integrated communities. And that's the reason I requested her that her insights would really make it a much more richer conversation. And last, when I meet a lot of Nepali families, after meeting dear friends at my level, I go and convey my regards to the elders, grandparents. And now I'm saying what Nepali grandparents tell me. I wish my child had gone to India. He would have been eating the same food, he or she. It would have been the same culture. They will understand what Dasai is, what Navratri is, Diwali. The child would have come home. I would have gone and seen the child. But it's very difficult when the child wants to go to Germany and Poland and on these far-off places. So you can see that how grandparents are more keen, not keen, I would say, they understand that today I can actually say India is part of Nepal and Nepal is part of India. This is how our generations, earlier generations, saw it as, one culture, one civilization. So leaving with those thoughts, I've dropped a lot of seeds and looking forward to, so the day is this afternoon, we'll have an amazing panel with great panelists, educationists from India and Nepal, and Manisha ji and myself sharing our perspectives, our life examples. And importantly, I heartily welcome our Mayo alumni, young leaders who are there with us, whom we are looking forward to hear about their experiences, that not just how shared culture made that impact, but more importantly, I'm glad and proud of you that you're back in the country and you're staying here and contributing and building it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Navita ma'am, for the remarks. With immense privilege, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Manisha Koirala. Let's give her a warm round of applause. Now, with great pleasure, I would like to invite Mrs. Neeti Bhalla Saini to deliver her keynote speech for our conclave today. She is the principal of Mayo College Girls' School in Ajmer, Rajasthan. With over 26 years of extensive experience in the education sector, she brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise, particularly in international baccalaureate curriculum. She has held leadership roles in several renowned residential schools across northern India, including Genesis Global School and Pathway World School. She has been an active member of International Baccalaureate Educators Network for over 15 years. Known for her visionary approach to education, she is dedicated to fostering an environment that promotes open communication and empowers all stakeholders within the school community. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Neeti Bhalla Saini to share her insight and keynote speech on transformative education.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll first start by thanking, I think it's embedded in our culture, and Navita ji set the tone so beautifully that it's a shared culture and a shared civilization that we live in. So I'm really grateful and thankful to Praveena ji, Executive Director of the National Institute of Training and Research, for having me over, and to Navita ji for actually conceptualizing this whole thought and saying that why don't we talk about the shared concerns, what the world faces today, and especially our nations, what they face, and let's come together. So I feel that this is something about a shared neighborhood, and neighborhood first, a thought that she had, and she sowed that seed in my mind a couple of months ago, and we've been planning this. So thank you for having me over today in this afternoon. I hope I'm able to do the justice as the keynote speaker, but this is one favorite quote that I have, and I quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world," unquote, Nelson Mandela. And I think that is where it is the bedrock of any change that you want to bring in. My passion with education actually started as a child when I thought that teachers had their best time in their lives. All they did was gave you homework and gave you tests. And so as a child, I played teacher, and I can see many people smiling. I'm sure you would have thought that. And then fast forward from there as a child to 1995 when I officially stepped into this world of teaching. And so unofficially 4 years, and then officially, yes, 26 years, but 30 years when I look back and I see how things have changed and how education has really transformed, I pause and I think about these things because, and when I was especially preparing this keynote, we keep talking about the 21st century skills, and we've talked about them extensively in the entire world. Do we even realize that a quarter of that 21st century is gone? We are in 2025, ladies and gentlemen. Do we even realize that we're still talking about that schools need to have 21st century skills, the schools need to teach and develop 21st century skills? I'm sorry, we should have already done it. So that's something which troubles me as an educator, and that's something which I want the educators here in the audience to reflect on, that where are we at the moment with the 21st century, because we've spent 25 years just talking about it. Do we have in schools the critical thinking skills being part of the curriculum and not taught as a separate subject? Because it's part of your daily life. You don't do critical thinking as a subject. Or do we talk about adaptability, innovation, all of it as part of your inherent skills in schools? I'm talking about urban schools. If you look at the rural schools, huge numbers between both the countries, India and Nepal, everywhere. So it's huge number there. We're not even talking about the rural schools, just even in urban schools. So just to come back to the point of saying that what should have been done and what should have been part of this educational landscape, and how should it should have had, looking at what kind of curriculum should have been there, or looking at the STEM part. We keep talking about STEM, there's arts in it, STEAM. We don't even talk about STEAM. How can STEM exist without the arts? Look at the examples from the past of Leonardo da Vinci. Was he a scientist? Was he an artist? Who was he? He was a multidisciplinary individual who actually understood and had STEAM inherent and ingrained. So schools keep talking about, and educationists talk about a lot of STEM. What about STEAM? What about the parallel thinking world which you develop together? Technology integration, how much are we doing it within our schools? And as educators, where are we in terms of technology? Are we only talking about the surface of saying, yes, we have iPads and this and that? Or are we really getting the children to deep dive with technology and work with technology, to use it as a tool for their learning, rather than just be consumers and consume what's given to them? So these are some of those more difficult topics as educators we have to reflect on and say that how do we move forward on these paths? This is a term, I know there are a lot of acronyms that keep coming back and forth. There was a VUCA world, and then this one very recent, in a couple of months, I've been hearing a lot about the Bani world, and I don't know how many of you heard that. What is the Bani world? And how does that world look like? Because the generation now is in a Bani world. And when we talk about the Bani world, it's brittle. So if you look at the terms, when we say the brittle, it's a world which is full of fragile systems. And the Bani world is a world where our children are now. A lot of youngsters, a lot of these alumni who are sitting here, they're working and living in this Bani world, and a lot of generations who are coming out will be working and living in this Bani world. It's a fragile system world. It's very brittle. Systems and structures which appear strong but may just fail abruptly at any given point of time. Supply chain disruptions, financial system disruptions, even an overall network disruption. I mean, how did we all survive? What did we do during COVID? Initially, it was the most difficult time. Then we learned and we started developing. Anxious, it's an anxious world. High levels of uncertainty and fear in the youth, because you don't know what's happening. You don't know where. It's not a time that you knew that I'm doing mechanical engineering and that's my path and that's where I'm going to be. Today you're studying something and you're working in a different world. So what are you looking at? You need to have that strong skill set, not just education, but a strong skill set to be able to survive in that world where you're going and moving ahead and working as life. So it's an anxious world, brittle, anxious. The pace of the changing world, the unpredictability of what does, it creates a lot of stress and anxiety amongst all of us. We are adults, so think about it as young children. Navita ji talked about the shared climate change that's happening. It's anxiousness for all of us when we talk about that. Economic instability in countries. Non-linear. It's a world which we don't know what is the impact of the cause and effect relationship. It's become again unpredictable. You knew that this was the cause and that's the effect that will happen. But that's not really true in today's world. That's not very true. For example, one viral social media leak. It can change economies. It can change, sometimes it changes the route of the voters' ID and voters' thoughts and elections. It can just change that. It influences policy making sometimes. And nobody knows the truth of that viral social media which goes out. Nobody is going and checking whether it's authentic, not authentic. Today, with AI, you can generate, there are apps where you can generate videos up to 3 to 10 minutes without actually clicking that video, just feeding enough prompts. We're still thinking and talking about it, but there is a generation who's learning and developing and working on it. So that's a very non-linear and a scary place for children to be in. Incomprehensible, the eye of the bunny. It says that technological advancements and the complex systems are becoming more and more overwhelming. Understanding the AI algorithms, I don't understand. I'm an educator, but I really don't. I understand some very basics, which is just the surface of that iceberg, but I don't really go and understand, and a lot of us don't even understand the surface of that AI world. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a world which is in front of us, and we have our children who have to go tread into that world, who have to make a career, who have to make right choices, and who have to shape the world. They are the leaders. There will be many leaders who will come out, they'll shape nations, they'll shape their cities, they'll be shaping the world. So how are we training them? What are we doing for that? That's a big question that's always around us as educators, as parents, as business leaders. As a business leader, are you able to cope with the person who will not be able to survive in these kind of circumstances? It'll be difficult. We grew up in very safe and different times. Just bringing all that aspect. This is in general for education. And in my keynote, I thought that I'll talk about in general where we are headed towards as an educational institute or as an educationalist. But I also thought that bring it back to where girls are. In this entire scenario, girls are 50%, the women are 50% of the population of the world. And some very alarming figures. A study of Harvard in 2016 showed, they did a study on certain basic skills, about 19 different skills. And they realized that out of these 19 different skills, 17 skills women were above the men. And they were edging above the men folk. Yet, when they are still above the men folk, skills like emotional intelligence, adaptability, collaboration, empathy, all those skills. Yet, this was a shocking data again, that in the Fortune 500 companies, only 4.9% women are CEOs. So they are on top, 17 out of 19 skills, yet they are in such small numbers. Not just that, just about 10% of women are actually leaders in parts of the world and heading just about 17 countries where you have, less than 17 countries where you have world leaders as women. So we're talking about 50% of that generation, 50% of the societal population, yet they are so far behind. They're not in the leadership roles where they should have been. You've got examples of people like the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda, the way she managed herself during the crisis, or you have examples of women like Junko Tebei who went against the odd, who challenged themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and did what they wanted to do and reached the, do the summit and push their limits. Personally, that's my personal, and I don't want it to be quoted, but my personal thing is that, do we really share these stories with our girls? Do we share them as bedtime stories, or are we still harping on the Barbies and the Snow Whites and the Cinderellas? That's a question for parents we have to think about. That what stories are we telling our girls? Stories of power, stories of conquering the world, or just stories of being soft and delicate? No, that's something it has to start from now, here, home. That's where their training will start. How would education come in? And how does education really shape them? Nurturing confidence and agency in girls. A little example, we had our investiture ceremony last week, just earlier in this week, before I came here, and one of the girls who came up to take her presidentship badge, she was shaking and nervous, and she said, I can't believe it, I got it. And I'm not sure if I really deserve this. And I was shocked, because I thought, why self-doubt? She was the chosen one by the teachers, by the people who were representing, and why that self-doubt? So somewhere we've forgotten and we've failed to nurture the self-confidence in that one child. And that's just one child. There are thousands of them, thousands of the girls who are not sure whether they can really do it. So please, we have to tell them inspiring stories. We have to tell them stories of power and success, and how people have survived in that world and how they have made a difference to that world. One of my favorite for nurturing confidence and agency is a person, I listen to her short audios a lot, is Indra Nui. And she says very interesting things. She says, yes, as a woman, you have it hard. You have to work double the amount, maybe triple the amount. But if you fight it hard, and if you have that self-belief, you'll be able to make it. You'll be able to reach the top. So here's to all the young alumni. I know, and I know it for sure, that they can make it to the top. And I'm sure a lot of parents of the girls who are sitting here, they'll inspire their daughters to do that too. promoting STEM and strategic thinking is another area I feel that we somewhere, again, I won't say fail to, but we kind of neglect when we are raising girls. I'm not a mother of a girl child, but my passion was always that I should have a girl. And here God's given me and granted that wish and has given me 750 girls to be with. So that gives me immense pride and that joy when I see them. But the fact of promoting STEM and the thought of strategic thinking needs to be planted right at the young ages. Let's stop. I'm not here to say what we should do or not do, but really let's change and give them more Lego toys and more of building things to work on that strategic aspect for the girls, young growing up girls. One of the founders, and it's not that that field is not touched by girls, one of the founders of Girls Who Code is Reshma Sujani. And when I was reading more about her, I found, what her mission has been, which kind of is true, that we need to close that gender gap in technology, that technology is more for boys and not for girls. On that note, it's been my passion at MCGS, at Mayo College Girls School, that we should have a design and technology lab, and that's a subject we would be offering in the coming session for our Cambridge students, because it's like, why should boys have all the fun? Why should they only do all the technology? The girls should also work around with technology and work with their hands and see, and really build that confidence for them. Fostering an inclusive environment for them. Again, going back to telling bedtime stories. What kind of stories are we telling these girls? How are we building their confidence and not shaking them and making them into self-doubt that, can I do it? Am I good enough? I know the world is not the safest and the best place. We keep protecting them for that need. But I think if we can equip them with a lot of mental strength, then they can take over that world. Absolutely. We'll not have 4.5% girls and women CEOs. We'll have a larger number. We'll not have just 10% women who are leading the positions, but a larger number. So here's what I thought. To tackle this Bani world, what we can do for our children, not just girls, but even boys, generally for our children, is stimulate more real-world crisis management situations for them. Some of the things which a lot of schools are doing, back in India I know they do it, but I'm sure a lot of schools here would be doing, is getting students to participate in the MUNs, the Model United Nations. And that's one great forum where they have situations and crises which are posed and the countries that they have to represent, and how the girls and boys come together and they think of strategic ways how they can tackle that situation or tackle that crisis and make a change into the world. Of course, they're posing at different representatives of the country heads, and they come and sit and debate, and it's very interesting, and it's so interesting to listen to those 16, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds talk about the world issues. So yes, it's a great way to have MUNs, or in my days, we used to call them youth parliaments, where only a country would be discussing, and this is at a larger world level. Establishing resilience through more role model stories, and I just talked about that. Integrating a collaborative problem-solving project. So a curriculum should have projects inherent and part of that curriculum which talk about problem-solving. So if you're teaching them science and physics and chemistry and bio and maths and arts, then your project should look at all the subjects together, so interdisciplinary aspect of the subjects, and looking at problem solving aspects. So that's one very important part for them to be building their skills and developing to be able to tackle that world which is ahead of them. Digital and financial literacy. It's a scary world for women, I think, especially financial literacy. And when I see people like Ms. Navita, who've kind of delved deep into the world of the financial literacy and have worked on the financial forensic aspects, I really I admire that, because a lot of girls and women, we think, oh, money matters and financials, let's just keep that away. But it's heartening for me when I see that more and more girls taking up commerce, more girls going into accounting and understanding the right economics of the systems and financials of it. So that's something very important. Again, digital literacy should be able to use and navigate their way, but also to conquer that digital world. That's very important aspect for them. Providing tools for self-compassion. We don't, especially for girls, more than boys. I'm sorry, I'm being and harping a lot on girls, but we don't teach our girls to be self-compassionate. We kill ourselves too hard. We push ourselves too hard. It's okay for women to take a day out with their friends. It's okay to do things, even men do that. To tell them to appreciate themselves. To tell them to say that, and recognize what their strengths are and appreciate and make a tick box in it that I'm really good, I did a good job. We need to teach them. We need to do it ourselves also. To appreciate who we are as women, and same thing, transform it to our girls. Solving world problems through community service. So there was a point of time when community service was one of the arms in schools, and they would say that it's essential to do community service. But I think that it should be an integral part of any school, any institute, colleges, where community service helps them to go to the grassroots levels and understand. So if our children go out, go to the world, go across to the world, learn, get educated, they'll come back to the nation. What was just touched before I started speaking, and the seeds which Navita ji was trying to sow, that we need our children to come back. So if they are part of the community and they understand the real world problems, because the population who sits here, we're a very small population in both the nations, India and Nepal. We're a very small community. The larger population is the one where the real world issues are, and where our children have to go work with them. Because they can't work in isolation, they can't work in silos. So you have to be working with that world population. So you need to know and appreciate what their problems are and find solutions to those. Arts. It's very important that students today bring arts into their learning, have a balance of the right and the left brain, so that when they are designing or when they're thinking of problems, they're able to use both those aspects, logical and the artistic part, and then work and find solutions. So in conclusion, just towards the end, I just want to leave you all with few thoughts which were on my mind while I was just putting these points down. One is that as girls, as women, they are naturally predisposed to excel in a lot of leadership areas. If we go back to the ancient times, to the early man time, it was the women who controlled and dominated the societies, because men were hunters and gatherers. They all went out, and they went out for weeks to gather food. So who was running the communities? It was the women. So it's not something new. We just have to realize it and bring that back. The question that should inspire a deep and urgent reflection for all of us here is that why so few in that powerful position today? So how do we change that landscape and make sure more and more girls and women are in the forefront and they're rising? I think our task as educators, parents and leaders is that we must create clear pathways for our students, our children, and to help them to reach out their full potential. We must ensure that education that we provide today is not just transformative for the individuals, but also a tool to build a shared, inclusive civilization. Because the more you educate them, the more tolerance comes into their minds. Because we are not just educating for the sake of learning and for marks gathering. It is an education which then helps these young children to build a more sustainable world. Because they are looking at reflective aspects, and they're going to be reflecting on it, saying that, is this a right step to do? Is this not a right step? So when nations come together and when they are getting educated together, there's a lot of tolerance, appreciation for each other. And I was having this conversation with the alumni, and they said that, we didn't know who was from where, but all that we knew was that they are our friends. And that's the camaraderie we are looking at. The world is getting flatter, so the differences and boundaries also need to start diminishing and becoming more flatter to be able to cope in that flat world. So let us transform education to prepare not just individuals, but a generation of compassionate, competent, and courageous global citizens. So that when we move into this and we look at and reflect on this shared civilization, it will be how well have we been able to empower all the members of this shared civilization, and especially our girls. So they're not just, especially the girls, they're not just part of that future. I know that they will be the leaders of that future. So I always say leaders, preservers of that next future. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neeti ma'am, for such an insightful keynote speech. She is also the panelist for today's panel discussion session. Now let us move to our panel discussion, where we will explore the critical topics around education and empowerment. As we transition to our engaging panel discussion session, it is my honor to welcome Mrs. Neeti Bhalla Saini, Principal of Mayo College Girls School on the stage to join us as a panelist for the panel discussion. It is my honor to introduce our next panelist, Ms. Navita Srikant, a highly regarded international development expert and India-Nepal relationship observer. Please join me in welcoming her on the stage. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Manisha Koirala. Ms. Koirala is a renowned actress celebrated for her impactful contribution to Indian cinema. Beyond her marvelous acting career, she is also recognized for her effort as a UNFPA Goodwill Ambassador and for establishing Manisha Koirala Cancer Education Fund. Her journey has been marked by resilience, which she courageously mentioned in her book. Her experiences have not only shaped her personal narrative, but also fueled her commitment to advocating for education and health awareness. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Koirala to the panel. As we continue with our panel discussion, now I'd like to welcome Mr. Medin Lamichhane, a prominent educational leader in Nepal, and the principal of Yulens School. He is the lifetime member of NELTA and executive member of South Asian IB School Association. He is also a workshop leader for International Baccalaureate Organization, a prolific writer, trainer, and he strongly believes in fostering a strong environment for learning and growth. Mr. Lamichhane continues to lead by example in bringing the entire Yulens community together and ensuring that all voices are heard. Please join me in welcoming him to the panel. Last but not the least, I would like to invite Mr. Narottam Aryal to the stage as our session moderator for today's panel discussion. Mr. Aryal is a prominent educator and executive director of King's College in Kathmandu, Nepal. With a strong focus on modernizing education, he has been instrumental in integrating entrepreneurial courses and innovative teaching method into the curriculum. He is actively engaged in discussion about enhancing the relevance of higher education in Nepal. His leadership at King's College reflects his commitment to bridging community need with educational initiative. We are excited to have Mr. Aryal guide our discussion today. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Narottam Aryal. Mr. Aryal will guide us through panel discussion today. Therefore, now I would like to hand over the session to him. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Asna. Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone who are present here, and thank you so much for joining today. I'm really, really honored and delighted to be here as a moderator. Little nervous as well because you can see how distinguished the speakers are here in the panel, but then let me dare to sort of conduct this discussion. What an amazing day, an auspicious day of Saraswati Puja to reflect on our education system and look ahead about our education system on this auspicious day. Thank you, distinguished speakers, for joining in the panel today. I really don't want to spend so much of time in setting the context because the earlier speakers have already highlighted on the significance of the topic and relevance of the topic. Let me directly jump into the business. So for the next 1.5 hours, right? So we will, of course, we'll delve little in a deeper level into the topic, and of course we'll open the floor for Q&A, but around 45 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, right, Ashley? So maybe I'll ask a very simple question, starting from our keynote speaker herself. So you really highlighted on the value of transformative education, inclusive education, and all. But then, as an educator, I've also been working in this field for the last 25 years, not so much into the school education though. I've been working in the field of higher education. Everywhere I go, every principal I talk to, everybody is talking about this holistic education, spiritual education, value of community, value of holistic development and all. But then like how exactly it is being practiced into the schools? Can you please elaborately bit more on how exactly it works in the school?
Thank you so much, Mr. Narottam, for that question. And I know it keeps troubling me when we keep saying holistic education, and I'm glad that you've asked this question, because I'll try my best to define it, and I'll take the context of my school then, that what we really do and how it is. So in a school, when you get into a classroom and you're learning from the books, versus when the environment is your classroom. So it's about moving from inside to the outside. So not just the books. So when you look at a holistic development environment, the students are learning in the class, they're learning outside the class. They can be on trips, they can be doing a lot of hands-on activities around the school campus, within their communities, outside and beyond the communities as well. And so all aspects, the 360-degree learning for any student is what we call holistic. And I'm not saying that it can't happen at home. It can, certainly it can, but I think the amount of time that today the parents have to spend in taking them from one activity to the other, to the third one, because schools, day schools especially per se, and I've worked in day schools as well for long, that they have only that much limited time. So maths can't only happen in class, or a physics can't only happen in class. If you look at the problems, they don't come as maths, physics, economics, or science or Hindi. They come as a problem. And when you're looking for solutions for those problems, you have to have 360-degree view of all the subject areas. And if you're going to be learning only in silos of each subject area, then I feel that it misses the point that you are trying to do holistic learning. So all subjects have to be together, integrated. In some of the jargon words, we call it transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, but that's where the bases lie. And if you're not a compassionate individual, then you are not really truly spiritual. You're not truly moving ahead with empathetic thought in your heart, and you're not moving ahead with everybody. Then you're just moving in a single manner. And what we just tried to emphasize, that the need is that the world moves together. All children, all this generation at least moves together. So I think at MCGS we try and provide a lot of those opportunities, right from competitive inter-houses to some non-competitive, and just to build camaraderie, but also a lot of learning outside the classroom. So it has to be a balance of enough amount of sports and activities and academics, all clubbed together with these MUNs and all the other activities, be it social service. That's what makes it holistic for every child.
Thank you. Of course, I'll definitely get back to you later. But then now, let me move to Nepal from India. So Medin sir, you've been working in the field of education, especially school education, for so many years, more than 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken, by now. So how is the situation of this transformative education in Nepal? Of course, like as I mentioned earlier, we've been hearing these kind of like trendy, concepts. Every school claims to be a progressive school, focusing on developing like, holistically. But then like when it comes to the examinations and all, when the schools celebrate, children with high marks are only like, made heroes. So what is your take on this, holistic education or transformative education, and how is the situation in Nepal?
Thank you, Narottam sir. When I'm saying something, maybe I can share my own perspective from my own school, and I would also like to share the perspective from the country. When we talk about transformative education, it's not limited to only teaching, learning. It also goes beyond that. So it's creating learning environment in school, as Principal Ma'am said earlier. So how are we embracing, such things in school? If we are going to value, the girl child in school, so what is the school's admission policy? At ULENS, from the very day one, we decided we will have 50% boys and 50% girls in the classroom. So even if we have few seats, remaining, so we wait until, the child comes for the admission. So this is how we are promoting both the genders. the problem with Nepali education is we are failing to create miniature society in the classroom. So how society is running or how society is moving, so that does not reflect what we do in the classroom. So if we look at the society, if we look at the community, who do we have in the community? So we have, 50% male, 50% female population. Do we have that in the classroom? So it's the school's responsibility to make sure that every single gender represents equally in the classroom. Going back, so who do we have in the society? There are people who have resources, who is the family economically, financially good, and there are few families who are struggling. Do we have children from both the communities in the classroom? Are we making sure that both children coming from both end are they are sitting together and learning in the classroom? So how are we creating, providing social justice to them? There are several, professions in the community. Are we having children from each profession? Or who is getting admission in the classroom? So school is not only for the place to learn and to teach. There are several other things associated, to be impressed in the classroom and at school. I think there are few schools who are coming, and those schools are called progressive schools. They are trying to value transformative education in school, but the majority schools are public schools, and the public schools still lack those systems.
Thank you, sir. I will also get back to you later with further questions. Now, from the providers of the education, now let me turn to the consumers of the education. Manisha ji, thank you so much once again for joining today. You have been inspiration to many people in this region. So I will ask you a very simple questions. How is your education in the school, and how important role it played in developing you as an individual and as a member of the society?
Good afternoon, everybody. यहाँ सबैहरूलाई उपस्थित नमस्कार छ मेरो. Honestly speaking, I don't know why Navita ji chose me to be here. I could be totally misfit, but to me, life has been the biggest teacher and biggest university, and I'm still learning. I'm work in progress. I listened to phenomenal talk from you, Navita ji, and from you, ma'am. And Yulin School is the most prominent school in Nepal. The college is one of the most prominent colleges in Kathmandu. So it's a privilege to be here. And I am learning a lot of things, listening to your conversation. I do not know about the school education, dear sir. But what I can say is I have my brother whose daughter is in school, and I see when you were talking about MOU, she tops in MOU. And there's such a comprehensive education system. We have it here, which we never did in my days. It was only books and blah, 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 whatever. Of course, we were far more integrated in societal, family scenario. We had ample amount of time. Nowadays, students don't have that time, but they're also getting so much of exposure. They go for hiking in the, they have these hiking trips. She debates on different world issues. She's a topper in the school, and I mean, yes, I can complain that I never get to see her much. But I think nowadays the school gives such a huge amount of comprehensive, holistic education, which is great. And it is preparing them for a world tomorrow. It is preparing them. But at the same time, when I just want to, taking from your conversation, you said, we are 50% in the world population, yet when it comes to the leaders, the CEOs, the topmost position, we are so far behind. It again comes back to the family values, because certain things school only can't teach. It becomes parental responsibility, and it becomes what kind of upbringing she had, to have that confidence to lead, to be on the number one position unapologetically. So that, I think, we need to stress and talk about equality, and talk about your rights as much as the right of a male child in the family. It's all family values, basically. And we need to probably speak more, educate more, and do more and hope more. There's a lot more things I want to say, but I think I don't want to take too much of time. But next.
Definitely, I'll get back. Navita ji, the same question to you as well. Would you like to share your experiences with if you could reflect back about your childhood education and how it shaped you?
That's really going back. So I think if I go back, the beauty is that, when you rightly said that during our days, we didn't have so many means. But I think a very important role, and that's the last important point, the role of parenting. I go back to the role of families in shaping who we are today. And I think this is where it really starts. That how did our parents push? And frankly, one of the things which stands out for me is the discipline which was instilled at home, and there was no compromise. Zero tolerance for discipline be of time, discipline for the hours to study, and discipline to be humble. That you are a student. It doesn't matter, and I'll give you a very interesting example, and maybe I move little away from schooling. But how it was enforced, it's a very well-to-do family. But I remember in the early days when I just started, working, my father said, okay, go travel in DTC buses. And I was like very surprised, house has so many cars, why I'm not being given a car? He said, no, you travel in buses. And as our blood boils and we act like that 18, 19-year-old youth, he said, it doesn't matter, I'll go in buses. I used to change 3 buses to get to workplace. And in our times, forget air conditioning, these are all standard DTC buses. But a year later, by that time, I had understood the importance of money and importance of what I earn, how do I save it, that importance of 1 rupee that I earned. And trust me, till date, there is enough money that I can splurge, doesn't matter. But I do understand that this is a hard-earned money, and then you become empathetic to other sections of society. And this is where I think we need to go back to parenting. And in our times, I think the parents really enforced these basic value systems, and it doesn't matter what background, but values, there was zero compromise. And this is something I would probably push back. I think that's what shaped us as leaders of today.
Great. Both of you touched upon the critical role that families and parenting play in shaping the children's future. But then what about the parents from the rural areas who are themselves not educated, and they are not aware of what kind of role they could play and how to save the child's future? So how can we sort of
So coming back, I think back to the rural areas, there is something very sensitive and probably we miss out in the urban areas. If you look at not the books language or the books education, but the sensitivity to climate issues, the sensitivity or the respect for the nature, the respect for the natural resources, the respect for the community, how you bond together in a community. There is no difference today, and I can tell you a big, huge difference. And if I take Nepal as an example, last year I was in Janakpur and Birganj. And if I compare to Kathmandu, whenever I come back, I actually say, Kathmandu for me it's more of an artificial city. That's not Nepal. The amount of Nepal that I see in Janakpur and Birganj, now there are not those fancy institutions or something, but when you talk to people on ground, you talk to those young children, they're more grounded. And I think this is where, for me, going back to these rural areas, that there is much more asset that they have. We just need to, pick what their their rich knowledge that they have and translate it. How many times have we actually got, leaders from rural areas that who are working on these very specific, from indigenous tribes, how they are safeguarding their culture, how they are finding means to, they're not waiting for someone to come and help them, but they are still preserving the culture, or they are still producing those the weavers and the handcraft, and they are finding the market. So they are even smarter entrepreneurs than when we are teaching entrepreneurship. So I think it's a two-way learning. I will go back to.
There are two things that comes to my mind. One is that I think at the government policy level only, we should really stress and demand and put pressure on giving equal chances to the girl child as well as the son. Normally in Nepal, I've seen the difference is not that much. But because of UNFPA, I've traveled to the remote areas of Nepal, and not so much yet there was. And I feel it demands some work to be done. That earlier on, I remember my dadi told me that her mother-in-law, BP Koirala's mother, all the daughter-in-laws were married in their teens. Those days, it was a child marriage used to happen, and but all the daughter-in-laws were taught classical dancing, taught how to ride a horse, taught read and write, and not only sticking to the kitchen. And from that time to now, a lot has changed, a lot has evolved, yet that disparity is still there. Having said that, like in my own home, I know somebody who's not of much higher income person, and they have one son, and who's like ladla of the family, and they have one daughter. Guess what? The daughter is far good in education and far more hardworking, and so the parents don't have a option but to provide a better education for her and better opportunities for her. Sometimes I feel parents also need some sort of a cajoling, and maybe a policy level at the government could also support that. Thank you.
You brought up a very, very important point between, about, disparity between the girls and boys still exists. Let me share with you a small story. We've been working with a municipality in Cabre called Pascal. Some 3 years back, I guess, when I went there for the first time and to talk to a group of students out there, when I entered the classroom, it was like bachelor's level class. More than 90% of the students were girls. I got so pleasantly surprised. How come so many girls are studying much more than the boys? But then like my happiness, my pleasure, got shattered immediately after I came back, got back from the class and talked to a teacher with a surprise. How come so many girls in the class? The teacher said, all the boys, either they go abroad for their higher education, or they come to Kathmandu, or at the list they come to nearby city called Dulikhel. So it's just not one of case. These days I get a chance to visit so many community colleges. The situation is same across Nepal. So I just wanted to add on to what you said. So I think long way to go to sort of change this kind of scenario. You touched upon the importance of nature, interaction with the community, interaction with the nature, and Nepal. Our tagline itself is called Naturally Nepal. But then I have not seen many schools getting these kind of stuffs into the curriculum. So it is gonna be one of hiking or trekking, extracurricular, not even co-curricular or part of the curriculum, not the sports, not the music, not community. And we need to have master's degree or PhD or bachelor's degree for at least to teach the kids. But then I'm a firm believer of the principle that learning can happen everywhere. You can learn from your mom, you can learn from a farmer, you can learn from. But then have we been able to really practice and incorporate these kind of philosophies and approaches into our school system? Medin sir.
Thank you, Narottam sir. I think we can. For this, we really have to train our teachers. Overall, if you look at the situation of our country, teaching and learning is limited to classroom, it is limited to teacher, and it is limited to textbook. So this is what is happening all over the country in education institutions. Now we have to come out of that comfort zone, and we have to really introduce the idea of learning beyond boundaries. So teaching and learning should not be limited to only classroom and textbook. Students can learn, yes, they can learn from teachers, but teachers are not the only people who they learn from. They can learn from their parents, they can learn from their seniors, they can learn from people in the community, they can learn from shopkeepers. So teacher is one, but there are long list of people who they learn with. And learning, when it is confined within the four walls of the classroom, and if it is not connected with real life and real world, then they don't get chance to interact with the people and the physical world outside the classroom. So that is missing in our education system. And why it is missing in the education system? Because, as Narottam sir said earlier, people are still valuing grades. So the emphasis is put on the product, not in the process. Until and unless we truly value the process of learning that really happens in real life and real world outside the classroom, then learning is not meaningful. So there are few schools who have started taking children out of the country, out of the classroom, and whatever concept they learn in the classroom, they go to the community or in the real world and real field, interact with people, physical world and the community. Whatever they learn, they come back to the classroom and share with the whole class. So few schools have started, but to take this process to the public school in the remote area, I think we really have to work hard. The ministry has to work, the local government has to work, and we have to work.
Yeah, I want to add to what Sir's saying, and that's something which is inherent in our school, in our culture,
Annual camps, so annual midterm, where every student, it's compulsory for them to go on a midterm. Back in the days, these midterms were exclusively hiking, trekking trips. With time, they've changed. But something which I'm very passionate about is where they are going, they have to either have an adventure in their life when they are going. So either it's a wildlife trip that is added, they can do a little sightseeing, or there's a trek, a camping trip, that has to be part of it. So annually, every girl goes for that. That's a thing. We're also part of the prestigious Round Square. So as part of Round Square, it has certain ideals. So I stands for internationalism, D for democracy, and E for environment, and A for adventure. So students are back and forth participating in different Round Square conferences where adventure is integral for them to do. The other thing that we honestly do in our school, apart from the horse riding and what they were talking about, the values that, talking about that the girls are learning how to do dance in the good old days, which was cultural, and do horse riding. So one of my ace horse rider, who's equestrian and does so well, is also preparing herself for Arangetram, which is the Bharatnatyam's examination level. So when I see these girls, and I was sharing with the alumni that each day they inspire me, and they make me so proud of what they are able to do. So you're absolutely right in setting that context, that it's important that children learn how to be in this transformative education world, to be able to use AI with the same competency as they are on the dance floor, performing their Arangetram or a Manch Pravesh, to being on a horseback ride, or doing cricket, or going on an adventure trip to any part of the world. So it's important that they have connection and they are able to move from one place to the other with comfort and ease. And that's what we want to do for all the girls. My school's a very small, very, very small grain of sand in this whole world, you see. If more schools could do that, and if more schools could transform their ways, I think it will make a difference. So like something, we have our weekly treks. So one grade, small section of girls go on the trek in Madar Hills, close by hills, it's not too far off. For me as an individual, I think adventure and trekking and being out in the mountains and going there is pushing your boundaries and challenging yourselves and telling that, okay, it's just around the corner, I have to just move further ahead. And then you see that there's another corner and another. So you keep pushing yourself, and that's what life is. That you are pushed down with problems, and then as you face problems, you push yourself and you rise up. I think everybody, especially more so Manisha ji, how you've taken that challenge on and pushed yourself hard up. Everybody around you can, can support you and encourage you, but till you don't do it from inside. So when you are out in the open, when you are out with the mountains, when you are out in the nature, you're always pushing and testing your boundaries, and that's very essential, not just for girls, but even for boys. Pushing our boundaries and to be able to do those things.
Well, just want to add to what Medin sir said. We should take pride about Nepal's forest cover. Don't we take pride? And who do we attribute that pride to? Our community forest groups. They stand out in the world. Now my request here from this stage, can we push for a policy decision, and we request the government and the education institutions that let's take our, the senior, the school leaders to spend time with community forest groups. And I want adventure camps, yes, great thing. But why not you give a sense of a pride and an ownership and the real nationalism to that young 14-year-old, 13 to 16-year-old, that one who has spent time with community forest groups can go to other countries and tell these young students in other countries the importance of a forest cover and talk about Nepal's pride story.
Thank you. That's really amazing point. So another important point that you touched upon during your keynote was inclusiveness, diversity. But then the sad reality in our education system, at least I can talk about Nepal, we have two distinctive groups of schools. One, so-called boarding schools, private English-speaking schools, and the other is more than 80% of students go to public schools where English is not the medium of instruction, where unfortunately certain people of certain economic strata only attend, And in private schools, people of higher economic strata, more urbanized and more who can afford to pay higher tuition fees of the school. While we are talking about this compassion, inclusion, equity, and sense of empathy, how can we sort of like teach our kids these kind of values when we are already creating a strong divide, big divide between these two sets of people? So, want to go first, you or?
That's a very, very sensitive topic that you've touched, and I think I can say that same for India, that nearly 80% of our population goes to such government schools. We call them government schools or public schools. Some of the government, and that's a very different topic to talk about, are trying to transform those schools and bring a difference in those schools. But by and large, it is what it is. Of course, the aspect that came into India and under right to education, where every school had to bring in 25% children from the economically weaker section. But I think that's more so to do more of an eyewash than it is, because a lot of schools are still not doing it, private schools in India, back in India too. But some of the schools, so the school where I was before I joined Mayo, we had about 20% students from the economically weaker background, and we said it starts at home. So we got all our bhaiyajis and didis and their children first to come into the school. And the moment they came in, we started realizing the kind of problems that came with that. Because it's not just giving them education. You have to make them feel inclusive, you have to give them everything, right from a uniform to books to providing them with the meals. Because when a child opens a tiffin box, it's as simple as that. There's something else in my tiffin and there's something else in the other person. And if I'm from the background that my parents can't afford a nice meal, then I look at that other child. So we had to do a lot of soul thought thinking there, to how do we make it. Coming to otherwise how schools can really do it, somewhere adopt communities. I feel schools should adopt a community and then say that this is a community that's ours and we're going to work with them on a weekly basis, have a small group of children go and work and not just go and spend time and come back. Genuinely do that and look at the problems. So under one of the projects, it's called Project Muskan, which our school's doing, we've adopted a couple of schools. So we are now targeting at one school, and we had invited, it was a community service project, and we had invited other schools, about 60, 70 students. And again, big problem with girl child. A lot of girl children are dropping out of school after the age of 10, 12 back in India because there aren't enough toilets for them. So we asked them, what do you need? They said, we need a toilet for the girls. So that is what we put together. So the children came in and the money and fund is raised. So projects like that, where if we can make a difference to that community, adopt one community school and start working with them, I think that will. So a lot of these private schools, if each school were to adopt a school, it would make, it's a lovely story that I keep saying, that a little boy was standing on the seashore and a lot of starfish had washed on the shore and he was just throwing them back. So an elderly man crossed by and he said, son, what are you doing? So he said, I'm throwing the starfish back because they'll die if they are on the seashore. He said, but there are thousands and thousands. I mean, it's crazy. What difference will you make? So he picked one and he threw it back. And that's my favorite story I tell the children. He threw that back and said it made a difference to this one. So I'm going to make a difference to one at a time. So let's not look at big projects. Let's start with a project is what my thought is on that.
Thank you, ma'am. So I would like to add something. If we truly, embrace the value of every child is unique, I think, we can value inclusivity and diversity. So when we say every child is unique, so every child has her or his own pace of learning, way of learning, and if we truly value their backgrounds and their prior knowledge, understanding and experience, when they come to classroom, they get opportunity, to grow if that is truly valued within the classroom setup. If we don't value, their backgrounds, their prior knowledge, experience and understanding, and their pace of learning and way of learning, and that sets, puts them in a very competitive situation. So the child comes to classroom to learn based on her or his prior knowledge, experience and understanding, not based on what someone has learned and to compete with someone else. So the classroom environment is very competitive in our context, if the child fails to compete, and there is a very high comparison between two children, which is truly unnatural, because no two children learn at the same pace, within the same time period, and that's very natural, and that's not accepted in the classroom. So in one way, inclusivity and diversity, yes, we have to have people from diverse backgrounds, diverse ethnic groups, that can be embraced in a school's admission policy. But what happens when we don't truly value their diversity and inclusivity in learning? Are we doing that? So that is missing in the classroom.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to add, or do you have anything?
So, I'm wondering, when you said a public, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, I was told in Kathmandu the public schools are equally good. They may not speak in English, they may not teach in English, but the standards of education is, am I wrong? But I was told that the public school in Kathmandu is doing pretty well. Maybe they're speaking more in Nepali and teaching more in Nepali and not in English, but the quality of education is equally, but I don't know, I could be wrong. How do we integrate, when a public school costs X amount, and when our topmost private school costs X amount, and the people who can afford are of certain income, and people, it's a big challenge. How do we do that? I don't have an answer for that, but I know that the moment you try and integrate, in the sense, the moment you bring in to that a child of a lesser privilege to your own environment, the psychological pressure the child and his or her parents will have probably will damage even further. So rather than bringing them inside and going out and helping probably is a solution, and making somehow some sort of a program in the school curriculum that you go out and help in the community. You go out and try and bridge the gap. You go out and do your bit. A small request, I visited animal shelter. Sorry to bring this up, but I want to take this opportunity to say it because it was playing in my head. An animal shelter I went to just a day or 2 days back, and she was requesting, can we just go and teach or express how it's necessary for children to be kind to the animals, so that even the parents would learn that. And the compassion comes from there. When it's ingrained, such values are ingrained in children, by making them understand to be kind. And also the child who goes back home, who's learned this, probably will teach the parent too. So I don't know, small little ways probably a private school can do as a community service, as something to integrate with the community, things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You raised a very, very critical and very serious and sensitive issue. I have also been really wondering, how are we defining learning basically? Is it the language? Is it the way you dress up? Or is it the way you speak? I'm sure, as Navita ji mentioned earlier, the children from public schools and rural areas have different kind of values and the learning because of the hardships they have been going through, and sort of the kind of coping mechanism they have developed from early on, which is really lacking in the sort of like in urban areas. For that matter, we don't even have the space to play. So what about our physical and spiritual development until and unless you play physically and you are immersed into the nature, you can really develop that kind of like physical as well as spiritual development. Rather than like, for me, rather than urban students and the students going to the boarding schools, going to the communities and trying to teach and help the kind of like learnings they have had in the classroom, and maybe like they might be a little smarter in the technology and the language and all, but it's about the collaboration, learning from each other, respecting each other. I think like that's the kind of like the education that we should be promoting. So I'm sure you may have like something to add or to elaborate on this.
If at this moment, can I jump into my career? So I'll go back. Two things probably, if I, or rather let me first pick up the last part. How do we learn from each other? So 2 years back, if you all remember, back into this Taliban Afghanistan issue, you've all heard about it, and how the acting Taliban government actually stopped complete child girl education. It's a shock, something what, imagine it happens to you overnight. How do you react? The first thing is, oh, we are sorry for an Afghan girl, right? That would be an attitude. And next time you see an Afghan girl, you'll again feel more sorry. But now, you'll be surprised that back in 21, I must take pride here and speak from the stage, that India was the only and the first country which remained committed to Afghan girls' education. And I happen to be from the community. I volunteered and I spent a lot of time with Afghan girls to make sure their education continues. And good 2 years I've spent on that. And I must say that I was not there as a leader. If I proudly take, and I'm grateful to those Afghan young girls who taught me even more resilience. So as Manisha ji said, we are work in progress, we are always learning. And I was very much learning, working closely with the Afghan community. These young girls, education, there is no Afghanistan board certificate anymore. Where will they go to higher colleges? Who will give them jobs? They don't have a certificate. Their identity has been reduced to zero. Yet, we encourage them to continue with their studies. We made sure that the Indian universities and they would grant them more scholarships. But these girls, they would be always smiling. They were unafraid. Because they have studied in that environment, but they're not giving up on their career. And that is when I take pride. So we kind of invited one of the leading Delhi NCR university to kind of an exchange, because we wanted them to have exposure. You'll be surprised, so I'm not going to name the university. We invited the principal and a couple of students, talked to my Afghan girls. They're talking, and our Indian students, obviously they have educated in the secure setting, so they are again looking down upon, and I could sense that immediately that empathy was more than sympathy for the Afghan girl students. Right there, I said, can I change the program format? He says, what? I said, my Afghan girls have something to teach you. They'll teach you what resilience is. They'll teach you what courage is. And they'll teach you that how do you, despite all the odds, still chart your way. And that was really a turnaround moment for the Indian students. So I think rightly said that there is so much to learn and grasp. And in our institutions, I encourage all the parents that mix around with those groups, not disadvantage, but challenge. The amount of migration and displacement which is happening right now, your children are going back abroad. Who are they sitting together with?
Oh, thank you. Much talked on transformative education, but then let me connect this transformative education to shared civilization. This Indian subcontinent shares some sort of like similar civilization, influenced by our Vedic traditions ancient like Hinduism, Sanatan, Dharma and all. But then at the same time, we have adopted, of course, we're really happy, proud to adopt Western, approaches in the name of modernization for whatever reason. So how do we, on the one hand, preserve our own cultural sort of like an identity, going back to the roots, at the same time being competitive in this globalized world? Starting from Navita, Neeti ji.
Oh, that's a beautiful question that you've just posed. I'll try and connect it with what Navita ji said about exchanges, and then move into talking about that, how do we retain our own cultural heritage value and yet move in the world in terms of transformation. There's something that that I'd like to offer it also as Mayo College Girls School, that we'd love to have some exchanges with schools here in Nepal, and short-term 10 days. We do these exchanges all the time with schools. So we're starting one with Belgium now, but we have a couple of them with the UK. We have one with Australia. We want to open doors to New Zealand as well, so that our children are able to go to far-off regions, immerse in a different culture, and come back and bring that back. So we'd love to do that with Nepal. It may not be an exchange. It can just simply be a participation in an event that we do. So that is one of the things I think. Because we're talking about shared civilization, and today morning I had the opportunity, and grateful to God that I had the most opportune moment to visit the Pashupatinath temple, and it's same. The way it's a shared culture, it's shared value systems. The way Pashupatinath temple, the worship that was happening, it's exactly what you would see in Kashi Vishwanath or anywhere else. So it's one, and so if we can learn from each other and develop more, if we can learn from each other's values, that is most important for us. I think learning from each other helps us to move forward, because when you again, so at our school we want diverse population, because that helps you build a strong sense of acceptance for each other. That helps you build a very strong sense of adaptability, and yet bring that sustainability within the environment. That how do we still work together, and how do we keep moving forward? So it's very important to have that aspect if you're looking at transformative education, and if you're looking at moving forward as one. Because like I said, we have shared borders, we have shared waters, shared environment, everything shared. Shared religion, it's the same thing. So why not have more shared learning experiences for our students?
Thank you. Navita ji, you have worked with different countries, several countries, and you've been working to bring Nepal and India closer and closer. So would you like to shed some light on how we can sort of create that kind of environment where our youths can appreciate our own cultural identities, everything, and also be competitive, have that, eyes on the horizon to understand the global practices and have global mindset?
So I'll bifurcate the question in two parts, because you touched upon my career journey. I've worked in almost 15 countries, and when I say worked, these are more than 1 year to 2 year stints in these countries, and easily traveled around 40. Now, and one of the question is that how easy it is to work. It's not it's English medium everywhere. But when you embark on any knowledge stream, you want to gain experience. So for us, world leader was not the word 20 years back. We were just going out. So my field was forensic investigations, and I said, I need to gain more experience, more variety of investigations. And I landed next day overnight in Sweden. Now Sweden, not a single person is going to speak in English, which means that, okay, overnight you have no other option. You are doing financial fraud, financial crime, you have to learn Swedish financial accounting terms. So there's a lot of hard work, which really you need to put in, and I picked up Swedish. 2 years later, I changed the country, I'm in Switzerland. Now what? Now I have to learn German, I have no other option. One of the investigation took me to Colombia. Now this is where, so as long, I would always urge that our systems, parenting, and we push our children to gain experiences, why they're traveling far, and push them harder. Life is harder, no problem, you learn a language. When you're learning a language, it is not just for professional career, you're becoming part of that society and community. So for me to understand the Swedish society, understanding the Swiss society, when you start understanding, embracing, you become part of the societies, communities, you then start thinking about global challenges. It just comes so naturally. There's no one who's going to teach you how to become a global citizen. Now, the toughest part, and this is where I'll come back to our culture part, one of the investigation took me to Colombia. Very limited time. And this is the case, and I can give you a brief idea. There was, as part of the peace process, there was a lot of humanitarian aid being given to the FARC families. So, to integrate FARC rebels back into the mainstream, but for their families, so as part of peace process. But then there were a lot of evidence and allegations that money is going back to the drugs and to the weapons. So, I like that thrill or the challenge. With that thrill in mind, I landed there for that investigation. For 4 days, I was thrown out and sit in the conference room because investigation was refused. They said, you speak English, what investigation will you do? I said, I'll learn Spanish. I was good with picking up languages. And then I said, I have a translator. So then they allowed. Now, investigation is a very technical subject. Translations don't help me in asking those right, difficult, complex questions in a subtle way or play around, but to get that answer out. And I realized that the translator was doing a bad job. In less than, not even a week, I only had hours to practice those important words of Spanish, picked up Spanish, did the investigation. Now comes the hardest part. I had to go and live with those FARC. I had to live with the FARC. So I landed in the village. And this is where the money was being siphoned for drugs and the weapons. Now you realize, when you look at those women and children, that there are people getting shot dead in 2 lanes later, which for me look like a nice, those movies from Latin America with that light yellow bulb. We've seen it in movies, but this is real life. What taught me? That what kind of a special life that do I come from? This is real life. They are still trying to survive, they're smiling. So it not teaches you resilience, but a fight. Now, how I could relate it back when I come back, this is how the Indian subcontinent, if you look at the leaders, the civilization, it was civilization of world-class leaders. They were warriors, they were not unafraid. They could embrace the challenges. We read in whatever, the Ramayanas and the Mahabharata and God knows how many epics. But we have learned that despite the hardship, you don't lose your calm and balance. So I could understand that what South America I'm witnessing is something which was always there in my genes. Nothing could deter. I could lose the kingdom overnight, doesn't matter. I could be thrown out. I would have nothing. But still I'm very much there. So I could relate. I finished the investigation. And when I'm returning back, the Colombian gentleman, very smartly, he said, I have something to tell you. He said, what? He says, though you were sent by the Europeans, I would have not allowed you to conduct this investigation because you would have had the prejudice and bias against us. But you did a fair and independent investigation as you promised. You know why? I said, well, I'm a professional. That's why I did it. He said, no, you are from Global South. This is a statement of 25 years back, a real example that this is the understanding and the trust. So from Global South, now coming back to civilization, the beauty of this Sanatan Dharma or our civilization is the freedom. And the day you understand and take pride, the religion, not the religion, I don't even call it the religion. I simply call it a way of life. Our way of life has allowed us the freedom and anekantvad, that I hear and listen to each other's principles, we need to take pride. And this is the reason why Indian leaders or Nepali leaders, in so many UN positions and WHO, we have Nepali leaders. We make that impact. But we need to have more collective voice now to push, but take pride that our civilization has actually inculcated the values of freedom and be open to others' perspective, and then we table our opinion.
Thank you, Manisha ji. Similar questions because you worked in India for so long. Of course, you were born and brought up in Nepal. Started, I think, like in India as well. So you've been part of like both of these countries. So how important for our youths to have that what do you call cross-cultural competence or cultural intelligence and all? How do we develop that?
Um, you know, everything starts, I think, at the family level and at the schools. Family first and then the school. The values, the teaching, the environment, everything impacts us. And if we are taught early to take pride in who we are, to take pride from where we come from, which culture, which country, whichever, then automatically when we are, when we are dealing with the world, when we are going outside our homes, I guess that self-confidence, that compassionate, that intelligence, that thing which is, are imbibed in us helps us. I'll give you a small example. Like in Bombay, we don't celebrate Mumbai. We don't celebrate Dussehra the way Dasai we celebrate here. But I always, every year when I was in Mumbai, I would celebrate Dasai with my family and my close-knit friends. Everybody will be wearing red tikka with that jana, that green thing, and everyone will be eating the Nepali food and aloo ka achar, and it's like my friends would love it. My friends in Mumbai in film industry would love it. So many of the film directors, the actors, everybody, they wait for my mom to come to Mumbai and make a Nepali food. And there were times my mom took Nepali Roxy also once and gave it, I remember during 1942 A Love Story, gave it to Vinod Chopra, and he just became fan of that. So I guess, but it's, again, it's taking pride of who you are, and also, being able to merge into the country that you're going in, to be able to appreciate, respect, and be part of that society, and be a good citizen there too. It's so important to have your own identity, take pride in where you come from. At the same time, be a global person, have a mindset, have a heart of a global mindset, and just be equally responsible, equally good in that society, in that country. I think that, yeah.
Thank you. In the interest of time, let me turn to the floor now. So let's take 2 questions from the floor, maybe like max 3. Quick questions. Please identify yourself and ask a question, but then please mention who do you like to answer. Please name the panelist. Can somebody hand over the mic?
Good evening, panelists. I would like to ask a question. This is bothering me for quite some time. So I see nowadays I see a lot of bridge or gap between these legacy schools like Mayo and others in Dehradun, which are more than 100 years old. And these new so-called world schools or new age progressive schools. So what is different among these legacy schools and these new age schools? And how are legacy schools transforming themselves in education to come up to these schools? Because parents find it difficult to choose between legacy school. Because I see a lot of alumni prefer their kids to go to Mayo boys or Mayo girls. But nowadays, kids, they want more progressive schools. So how is the
More
legacy schools
progressive.
catching up to them?
Since you didn't
Thank
mention
you.
the panelists, I assume it's me. So I'll take
Yeah,
the
please.
privilege of responding to this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please
So I've worked in both kinds of schools. The schools that you're talking about, one big difference that I see in terms of progressiveness, I think a Mayo or any of the new age schools, they're very similar. But somewhere I think at Mayo College, I feel that we're more progressive than a lot of these new age schools for simple reasons. We're progressing ahead with time, but yet we've kept the core value of discipline in our mind. So being progressive doesn't mean that you stop being disciplined. It doesn't mean that you stop being on time for things and being still dressed up the way you're supposed to be. So that's a big difference that I see. So in the name of being progressive, what is important? Students to have voice. They should have student agency. They should have a voice, choice, and ownership of what they do and how they do their things. With schools, very legacy schools have that in our schools. They do it with respect. So they question teachers. They come into. So I know my girls come into my office all the time and they have concerns. They'll come and talk about it. So that's one of the areas that you have to empower them to be able to take the ownership of the actions that they're taking on. That's one of the aspects. And I think the other aspect in legacy schools versus the new age schools is that the kind of curriculum that they're offering. So a lot of new age schools are offering mixed curriculum. So they have the national curriculum and they have international curriculum. And so have the legacy schools adopted. And we have brought in international curriculum into our school as well as a choice for students. And picking up the best practices and kind of percolating it down to the junior levels. That's one of the ways that we are transforming. Our legacy schools, air conditioned, if you're talking about very comfort life, we have a lot of thought on that, but we feel that don't make life so comfortable for the children. They need to really, and we've just heard stories of being resilient, of being tough and fighting it hard. I think we need to continue to push our children to be able to stand in that world which is not going to be comfortable enough. So being in a difficult environment will always teach them how to be resilient. And I keep saying that so many times that we are all as educationists talk about IQ and then we started talking about the emotional quotient, EQ. My favorite is AQ, the adversity quotient. That has to be really strongly built into our children. So I don't see ourselves at all at disadvantage. I see ourselves more at advantage because we have both sides. We have the legacy and we have the modern world.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to esteemed panelists. My name is Devika. I am an alumni from Mayo College Girls' School, batch of 2016. And I think my question is to anyone from the panelists. It's quite generic, so I think everyone would have an opinion on this. But we do have a very shared civilization, India and Nepal. We share Bollywood. We share a lot of friends amongst us. I think we have a lot of shared culture amongst us. In terms of policies, I work in policy research, so I wanted to know, having an incremental change in the education policy in Nepal is relatively easier. In the Indian context, what goes around in the background when you have to make any kind of change in a policy related to education or, I think
that's a difficult question because policy change, especially with regards to, I'll only talk more so with regards to education. It's a very long process because a lot of stakeholders are involved in it. So you have educationists, you have senior educationists, and what I like about the policy changes now of late is that a lot of new and young educationists are being involved in kind of putting those policies together. The only problem that is there with any of these policies, especially with education, so I'll take an example of the new education policy that came in. It's a very well drafted policy. It is what is the need of the hour, what all across the nation, India, Nepal, everywhere, we should adopt it. The biggest problem is teachers training, teachers development, because the policy makers can write the policies, they can build that policy, but the people who are going to implement that is where there is a gap and which needs to be bridged. And a lot of schools where they're more privileged
to be able to do that, but many schools are still not. They were really struggling. So I like the policy that has come in, but how do we, so as educators, I think it just becomes our more responsible, a bigger responsibility for us. And when I was talking about adopting a school, is as leaders of schools where policy, whatever has been changed is being implemented, how can we go back and train them? So it's not just at a student level, but a teacher to teacher level. That how can I give back to the community as a teacher and share my experiences with the community?
Thank you, ma'am. We are almost towards the end of the discussion. Manisha ji, do you have any parting words? Do you want to say any?
First of all, thank you, Navita, for having me here and with such esteemed people on stage. Thank you. Honestly, this whole experience of participating here itself has, bombarded me with so many thoughts and a huge admiration for you. I like the fact that what you did for Afghan kids, I feel one question you had raised is what remains with me, and we probably need to ask ourselves and come with a better, answers and hope is what are we teaching our children to be? Most of the Nepali children, and some you said in India as well, the only high point in life is to go abroad. The moment you're 9th or 10th passed, you're looking forward, the parents are looking forward to send their children abroad. So what is the answer do we have for that? And what kind of education system are we having? What can we do? Is what we need to think about. And I take that question really seriously. I'm not in a position to do anything, but maybe collectively if we can raise voice, if we come with some solution, maybe we can have a certain pressure group or advisor group, something, so that it changes in next 1 decade at least. So the flux of brain drain that is happening in our country is something to worry about. And if we can think beyond, okay, after the education, what level of, what kind of citizen are we producing, is also a good thought to part with. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for it was great honor and privilege to have you in the panel. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your insights. Thank you. Yeah, so please, if you, thank you.
I would like to request our co-chair, Ms. Praveena Dahal, to provide Manisha ma'am with the token of appreciation. Thank you so much, Manisha ma'am, for your valuable presence. I have a small request to make in presence of Manisha ma'am, if we could take a photo of, if you could take the photo of our.
So Navita ji, again, as mentioned earlier, you've been working relentlessly to bring India and Nepal together. So what can we do together, maybe like at the government level, at the school level, at individual levels? What can we do to enhance this shared civilization through our transformative education? Or for that matter, we can call it transnational education.
Yeah, I think you rightly said that it's time to move from transformative to transnational education. And this is the important takeaway from here. But just going back, and a lot of people ask me, why are you so attached to Nepal, right? The answer lies right here with the education. So I worked, the first time I arrived in Nepal, I happened to work with Government of Nepal for 2 years. So I could have just acted as a professional from ADB, coming and working with the PMO and the other agencies. But then I was living there for 2 years. And this is the tough years of, we've had earthquake 2015-16, the tension, all the economic embargo that happened. We lived through those shortages. But when you become part of the society and the community, you are also going through the challenges and the hardships together, right? And this is when you take away and you come back, that for me, that Nepal, India, that my contribution, what can I do, stays back. So this is how I urge that you become then the global citizens. Nepal, even though more dear to me, because not just the open border, the open border civilization or the partners, neighbors that we are, but there is that understanding, and more you hear from grandparents, and I mean Devika ji and I, we were talking, the young girl, that grandparents, they see India as an extension of Nepal, and same thing for India would see Nepal as the extension. So it's equal partnership, equal extension of the shared culture. And when you are growing up together in that shared culture, imagine, Manisha ji just left, but when I hear about those Koiralas, senior elder Koiralas, the political leaders of those times, because they started in India, when they were prime ministers on both sides, they would just pick up the phone. And that is the relation we develop. So all of you, when you become policy makers of two countries, you would just pick up the phone. So the diplomacy and the dialogue becomes so easier in shared civilization when you've studied together. So this is something I would want and urge to, that we build more relations at this level, that 20 years from now, whenever they would be policy makers, political leaders, pick up the phone and resolve the issues.
Thank you. At the end, you can also share your final thoughts along with, the same to answer to this question as well, both of you.
I think I'll just share my final thoughts, which years ago I'd read this beautiful book by Greg Mortensen, and it's on and since Navita ji's been talking so much about the working with the Afghanistan girls, so it's on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, where he spent a couple of years, and this book is called 3 Cups of Tea. And I'd heard him at one of the conferences as a keynote speaker at one of the IB conference. And he says something very beautiful, and that has stuck with me, that when you educate a boy, he fends for himself, for his family, and he takes care of them for all his life. But when you educate a girl, she not only takes care of herself, her family, she comes back to take care of the entire community, and the entire community develops. So that's why I feel that girl-child education is very, very important for all of us to talk about that. Those are my parting words for education.
Thank you, Narottam sir. So I would like to add on something what 3 of the panelists raised. Ma'am, you talked about global citizen. What does it mean to be a global citizen? I was going through newspaper this morning, and I would like to share 3 different information. So we are spending about 57 Arab rupees. So Nepal is sending to foreign universities, and that does not include India. Over 150,000 students are going abroad for further studies. And last year, 65,000 people permanently migrated from Nepal. What does it mean to us when we talked about becoming a global citizen? Does it mean migrating from this country to another country? Or what does it mean? I think either we are misinterpreting or misunderstanding the concept. I think time has come to teach the meaning of global citizen to our young children. Yes, we need to be a global citizen. What does that mean if the core values of it is cultivated from the very beginning? We can stop this trend down the road in 5 to 10 years of time. Principal ma'am talked about teacher development in schools. I think it's a global problem. School has become the center for child development, and the school needs to be converted to the Center for Adult Development. We teachers are teaching in a school, and there is no room and space and opportunity for teachers, those who were born 30 years ago and teaching children who are born these days. The teachers were born with radios and televisions, even not with the internet, and teaching, Gen Z and Alpha generation. So there is a huge gap. So we also need to learn, to minimize the generation gap, and the opportunity is not there in schools globally. We really have to think in that line, from that line too. Manisha ma'am, asked about, the quality of education raised in public schools in Kathmandu. I don't know, what is the measuring rod of quality education? Is it the result of SEE examination? We know, how children get grades in SEE examination. When children go to grade 10, they are not prepared for future. They are not prepared for life. So children are prepared for examination. And the examination is based on memorization of facts, information, definition, formulas, and all the facts and information. When they are asked to solve the problem, so they are not able to solve the problem, whether they are able to think critically or not. So those things or those skills are not counted when we talked about quality education. At the end, I would like to thank National Tara and the organizing committee for inviting me and giving me chance to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, each of you. Thank you very much, each of you, for your time and also for your very, very insightful thoughts. I hope this discussion was really useful for all of you. And thank you, our dear audience, for becoming so nice audience, so patiently listening to the conversations and asking questions. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you, National Tara, for providing me this wonderful opportunity to moderate such a distinguished panel and on a very, very important and critical topic. Of course, we discussed a lot of issues, a lot of agenda. I'm sure we could not do the justice to each of the agenda because it's a very, very complex thing, having a lot of factors and having a lot of actors, because education is a very, very complex process. But then for me, there are three key takeaways. One, our education has now been very, very limited. So education has been defined in a very, very limited way. So we have to really expand the horizon of education by taking this comprehensive view. I think Manisha ji rightly put this phrase called comprehensive education, comprehensive approach, by integrating the community into the learning process. Learning happens everywhere. Learning happens in the community. Learning happens in the nature. We can learn from each other. So that's one. For that, we need to embrace the community and get the students immersed into the community, learn from the communities, play with the community's real problems, real world problems, and grow as an individual and as a citizen. Two, by collaborating with different countries or education institutions from different countries, we can develop that shared civilization, learn from each other. We can be rooted into our community. We can be self-assured, and we should be and we must be, but then at the same time, we should learn to respect others as well. No culture is superior or inferior, it is a culture. If we can collaborate with different cultures, we learn a lot more, and we grow together as an individual and again as a global citizen. That's two. And three, I think we should rekindle our own ancient values, where there are a lot of good stuffs to appreciate, to learn from, and at the same time, again, embrace the latest technologies and learnings from elsewhere. So these are three key takeaways I can sort of draw upon from this discussion, though there were a lot of other very, very powerful and important insights. Once again, thank you so much for your time and wonderful insights. Hope to continue our conversations in the future as well. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Enjoy.
Thank you to all our esteemed panelists and our moderator for an engaging and insightful discussion. The perspectives shared today on the transformative power of education, particularly in empowering girls and fostering inclusive learning environment, have been truly enlightening. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our panelists for their time and expertise, as well as to our audience for your active participation. Your engagement is vital in driving the conversation around education forward. Now I'd like to request the co-chair of the conclave, Ms. Praveena Dahal, to provide our esteemed panelist and moderator with token of appreciation. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we will move forward with the experience sharing session. This segment is designed to provide personal insight and reflection on transformative power of education and its impact it had in their individual journey. We have Ms. Pedika Murarka, an alumni of Mayo College Girls School batch of 2012. She is a social entrepreneur dedicated to driving positive change in Nepal. She co-founded Educase, a woman-led social enterprise that empowers marginalized students by providing innovative school bags that fold into desk. Let's welcome her for experience sharing.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, it's such an honor for me to be talking here today in front of, obviously, the principal of my alma mater, and on a topic that is so dear and so personal to me. One is Mayo, obviously, and the second is education. Growing up, I've always believed that education has had the power of changing the world. It is the solution to all the problems we face, at least the foundation of all the problems we face. Societies are made out of, societies are foundations of education that we receive. So I think that's why it's been so close to my heart. And my own journey has been a testament to education. It has shaped me to who I am today. As an aspiring entrepreneur at LSE a few years ago, I found myself gravitating towards finding solutions in the education sector as well. And today, my work at Educase, we create child-friendly spaces for children in marginalized communities across Nepal. And a lot of times people ask me, why did you choose to work in this field? It is actually very difficult. And why did you choose to do that? The only answer I had was because, again, the same thing. If someone is educated, they have the power to change their community, they have the power to change their society. And my life changed because of education, so I thought, why not transfer that to someone else as well, to the people who do not actually have access to that. And that's how I started my journey as an education professional a couple of years ago. I spent my most formative years at Mayo College Girls School, actually, 8 years in that school. I went as a 9-year-old and graduated as an 18-year-old. And before that, I was a shy, very quiet student. I was good at academics, but participated in 1 or 2 activities that were, at our disposal in school in Nepal over here. But when I went to Mayo, everything changed. Going to such a competitive, dynamic, and diverse environment, I think changed my life, opened my eyes to a whole new world, and I think it was just getting better from then on. So I think one of the most powerful things, or the most fun part of my Mayo life, was the exposure it gave me. And by exposure, I don't only mean the people I met there or what I learned in textbooks, but the array of activities Mayo has. So I can't tell you enough about the activities that if I start listing down the things that the school offered us, this evening would finish. We had to participate in so many things. There was music, dance, sports, all kind of sports, every sport that you've heard of today. And I think our day also revolved around these activities more than just academics. So I remember there would be a day where we would go from our regular classes to probably, my friend and I, Sampada, sitting over there, we would train for our squash nationals, then come back and we would have to practice for some dance inter-house, go for our prep where we do our homework, and then end the day with art and craft inter-house practices. So you could see how our day changed over the course with so many different activities. It wasn't just studying, which we think about in a school environment, but it was a more holistic learning, and I think that translated into my life even today, with or without realizing. As an entrepreneur, your entire day is about multitasking. It's the core of becoming an entrepreneur. So the multitasking enthusiasm I had back in school translated into my work today. I have the ability to switch from one activity to another without any friction, because I had to do that as a child as well. And I think that also shaped me in problem solving or decision making, because again, it's not one thing that helps you make a decision, but it's the multitude of things that you have to do in the day. Another thing Mayo really taught me well was adaptability, and everyone can attest to that sitting in this room, because living away from your parents as a 9-year-old, you have to be independent with or without your will. You have to become independent with other girls trying to be independent. So you learn from them how to live alone, how to do your own work, how to do everything by yourself, figure out what you are as a person and who you are in that environment with so many people teaching you, that today when I go to a village to do some research in government schools, or when I walk to international forums, I feel I'm comfortable in each setting, and I don't feel out of place wherever I'm going. And perhaps the most important lesson Mayo actually taught me, and I learned that in hindsight just 2 years back, I would say, is the power of having your own voice. So in today's world, everyone talks about femininity, being a feminist, and this is how you'd be a feminist, this is how you don't be a feminist, and the list of things that go with it. That we didn't use that word in school, but I think it was ingrained in our environment. We weren't told that this is what a boy does or this is what a girl does. We were always given the chance to think about what we want to become, how we want to do it. No one told us this is something you cannot do. We had the pride to work in whichever field we wanted to. And again, that translates into today, where when I walk into a room with either government professionals or people who are like multiple years seniors of me, or in a room where I'm the only woman or the youngest person, I feel comfortable having my own voice. I have my own opinions, and I don't feel uncomfortable sharing them, because I was given a place to do that even before, and it wasn't shut down because of different societal norms. We were always told that you can do and be whoever you want. And finally, I cannot end this without mentioning the community Mayo gives you. So anywhere I travel around the world, especially in India, any city I've gone to, I see a Mayoite there. You can call someone who you haven't spoken to in years. They'll still answer your phone and make that extreme, commute to meet you, regardless of how busy their schedule is. I feel like this is what transformative education actually is. It's not just about learning what's in your books, learning the theories and the formulas. You'll actually forget that the next day of your exam. But it teaches you, proper education actually teaches you how to think critically. It teaches you to have your voice and lead with that voice. And as we discuss, how to become a global citizen, I've done that a lot with Narottam Dai actually on multiple occasions, where we sit and discuss what is proper, quality education, great education. Is it marks? Is it the environment? Is it teacher training? I think we're still looking for that answer, but I just feel like if you look at the end result, that kind of helps us go back to the solution. And as I stand here today as the product of education, I believe that forums like this can hopefully help us create those environments as well. And that's my experience being a Mayoite.
Thank you so much. Next we have is Miss Bedika Thapa. She is also an alumni of Mayo College Girls School batch of 2016. She is a policy researcher specializing in gender studies, geopolitics and governance. Currently, she works at the Institute of Integrated Development Studies, IIDS, a leading think tank in Nepal. Let's welcome her.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. A very good afternoon to everyone who is here hanging on. It's a long day, but thank you so much for staying on with us. Standing here, I can't help, like Vedikadi has very beautifully mentioned already, all her experiences. I feel like she's explained it so well, so I'm going to get into a bit more of my personal journey too. So Mayo, when I think about it, it's all love, it's hearts, it's growth, it's friends, it's everything I can think of. It was a bubble we lived in, a very beautiful bubble crafted by our teachers, supported by everyone who was around us. And I enjoyed all the 9 years that I was there. Growing up in Kathmandu, the idea of moving away from home, far away from home, that too to Rajasthan, to pursue my education. As a 9-year-old, I was quite puzzled as to why Rajasthan? Maybe like Dehradun would be better, climate-wise. But I had to try to overcome that nervousness, and that happened as soon as I entered school. The teachers welcomed us as holding house students with warm smiles, and there were senior students kind of guiding us, saying, go here, that's okay if you're nervous, are you lost? And just asking us and guiding us around. That was the beginning of my Mayo journey. Over the years, Mayo became home, home became Mayo. And I learned to balance my academia with the responsibility of growing up in an environment completely devoid of family. And I had to start standing up for myself, and I had to push myself not just to be seen, but to be heard, which Mayo really did teach me. And that is something a lot of girls are not taught, and I wish that was inculcated in each and every girl in the world. Mayo gave me the freedom to explore my identity beyond the usual boundaries of class, caste, religion, and it really helped me find my own path in this very complex world, guided by the love and support of my friends and my dear teachers. While I struggled with subjects like maths and chemistry, I quickly realized that my heart was in the arts. And beyond academics, I found immense joy in extracurricular activities, especially Indian classical dance. Under Ma'am Seema's guidance, who was our dance teacher, I took up Odissi and later had the honor of serving as the dance president, an experience that was both fulfilling and so empowering. I also played the sitar, which I loved, and my parents are, till date, they really do show off that I play the sitar. And I was part of the school orchestra. My days were filled with inter-house competitions, MUNs, debates, roundtable conferences, international student exchanges, and midterm trips, and so much more. But what stood out the most for me was the sense of confidence and belonging that Mayo truly instilled in me. Every single moment contributed to shaping who I am today and who I aspire to be. Looking back, I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to be a Mayoite. My friends from those years remain my support system even today, and I still reach out to my teachers with heartfelt gratitude messages on Teachers' Day. Despite my initial fears of not fitting in, I never once felt like an outsider. My hesitation of not knowing Hindi as a language was quickly quashed after I became editor-in-chief of both Hindi and English magazines. And Mayo did teach me that education is so much more than just books, and it's about the connections that we truly build with one another and the values that it inculcated in us. Today, I work as a policy researcher, and I advocate for gender equality and good governance, driven by the goal of creating a platform where girls, young girls, and women have access to the kind of opportunities that I received. And every time I step into a new space, like Vedikadi mentioned, I too always carry with me the confidence, the resilience, and the curiosity that Mayo truly nurtured in me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my journey and to be a part of this event. I will always cherish my time and really treasure my time at Mayo, and I will forever be grateful to the opportunities that it has opened me up to. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both our guests for such vibrant experience sharing. So with this, we have come to the end of today's program, and I would like to take this moment to thank our keynote speaker, panelist, moderator, our respected co-chairs, respected guests, educators, parents, and all the alumni of Mayo College Girls School, and each and every member, guest who is present over here. With this, it's me, Asma Bidari, signing off. Thank you so much. Next we have is a networking high tea session, so please join us for that. Thank you.